他批评北约轰炸南联盟。他反对制裁，因为遭受痛苦的是普通民众。他表示，政治家应服务本国利益，而非听从他国指挥。他称赞中国是真正的朋友。塞尔维亚新一届政府成立之际，总理布尔纳比奇接受高端访谈独家专访，敬请收看。
关注国际焦点，洞察世界风云。大家好，欢迎来到本期的高端访谈，我是邹韵。今天我们来到了塞尔维亚首都贝尔格莱德，即将在这里对话塞尔维亚总理阿纳·布尔纳比奇。5年前，他成为塞尔维亚的总理，在今年的8月份，他被再次提名，获得连任。布尔纳比奇总理坦言，新一届的政府将面临2战以来前所未有的局面，需要应对包括粮食短缺、能源危机、通货膨胀在内的多重挑战。那么他计划如何应对挑战，走出塞尔维亚的发展之路？今天我们一起在对话中寻找答案。
This is the cabinet where we have cabinet meetings. This is the meeting room for the cabinet meetings. These are all the seats of the ministers. This is the general secretary of the government.
With
this is my seat.
Right. Oh,
this
yes,
is the seat of the first deputy prime minister and minister of foreign affairs. This is deputy prime minister and minister of finance. He's the deputy prime minister, minister of defense, and the rest is ministers across the table. So this is basically where the most important decisions
are made here in the country.
Yes. And my cabinet is just upstairs. And well, I thought this would probably
What
be
is it
the
like?
most
It's like lots of fighting and quarreling? Was it like pretty civilized
No,
process?
it's pretty civilized. Most of the quarreling is done behind the closed doors, one-on-one. And so basically the decisions that are taken here are the decisions that have already been agreed.
Prime Minister Brnabｉć, thank you so much for joining us on the program. Well, first of all, congratulations on being appointed as Serbian Prime Minister for another term. I know recently you're very busy with the formation of the new government, and it seems that the situation actually this time is pretty tough because he said in different occasions that the new government is going to face circumstances unseen since the World War II, or is going to face much more demanding challenges than the cabinet did 2 years ago. So what is the government plan to tackle those challenges, and what are the most important principles at play?
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be a guest on your show. Yes, we have just formed the new government. This is my third term as the Prime Minister of the Republic of Serbia. And first and foremost, I really have to thank everyone who's watching us in China for the support and partnership between China and Serbia that we like to call still friendship and partnership between China and Serbia. And so in my third term, I am very much looking forward to continue strengthening that partnership and friendship between China and Serbia, both political and economic. As for the challenges, especially as a country in the European continent, we feel a lot of consequences of the war in Ukraine. And absolute priority going forward for this government is to change our energy policy. So more sustainability, more energy independence, diversification of energy sources as well, more renewable energy sources.
President Vučić has said what is going on in Ukraine now leaves Serbia stuck between a rock and a hard place. So now is the situation getting better for Serbia, or is it going to get worse before it gets better?
Unfortunately, I expect that it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Why?
Because what has happened in Serbia, or former Yugoslavia, back in 1999, and then again repeated in the early 2000s, or the first decade of 2000s. So it is very difficult for some Western countries to accuse anyone for aggression when in 1999 they bombed Serbia. without any consultations or the decision made by the Security Council and the UN. And so it was a clear act of aggression.
布尔纳比奇总理所说的是1999年震惊世界的北约轰炸南联盟事件。1999年3月起，以美国为首的北约在没有联合国安理会授权的情况下，对南斯拉夫联盟共和国进行了长达78天的空袭，包括学校、医院在内的民用设施遭到多轮轰炸。 这场暴行中，塞尔维亚有2000多名无辜平民丧生，6000多人受伤，近100万人流离失所，200多万人失去生活来源。
The bombing of Serbia, and I have to say also Montenegro, was a clear act of aggression.
It is sad.
It is absolutely sad. It is absolutely sad.
Right.
Even today, when we mark every anniversary every year when the bombing started, and again that has actually happened in Serbia only since Aleksandar Vučić became the prime minister. And year in, year out, we see people who lost someone during that bombing, lost their parents or brothers or sisters, and it is always sad, but it needs to be remembered.
And this barbaric act, as many would describe, has caused loss of lives and catastrophic damage, including the killing of 3 Chinese journalists and the bombing of the Defense Ministry, which is just over the road of where we are to your office. So this part of history will never be forgotten by people of both countries and also has created a very special emotional bond. So what is your take on this horrendous episode of history?
Yes, I remember clearly the night when the Chinese embassy in Belgrade was bombed. I remember the casualties. Unfortunately, I have to say unfortunately, at that point in time I did not live in Belgrade, in Serbia. I was in the UK. But it was especially difficult for me not to be in my country and not to go through this while being here. All my family was here. All my friends were here, and it certainly was the most difficult time for me emotionally, I think, in my life. But I remember watching from London when the embassy was bombed, and terrible sights, and I could not actually believe that something like that happened, especially because everyone knew that Chinese embassy was there. No one ever explained, how could things like that happen? How can you bomb someone's embassy, in a country that you are attacking without the UN Security Council resolution? It's something that until today cannot be explained, and I don't think will ever be able to be explained. And so certainly, I mean, those things do create a long-lasting bond.
2016年6月17日，中国国家主席习近平对塞尔维亚进行国事访问期间，出席了贝尔格莱德中国文化中心奠基仪式。
这里是被炸使馆的旧址，也是新落成的中国文化中心。虽然新的大楼已经拔地而起，但是门前的纪念碑还在提醒着我们，这片土地曾经是硝烟上的废墟。对于中塞两国人民来说，这段历史将永远被铭记，因为它承载着过去的伤痛，鲜血凝成了友谊和守护和平与安宁的共同心愿。
Well, 5 years ago, when you first became prime minister, you said in an interview that Serbia is changing, and it's changing fast, and you will be part of the change. And now 5 years on, what are some of the changes do you think you have brought to the country?
Absolutely, digitization in all aspects. That was kind of, I think, my key focus, my key area, and then my key contribution to Serbia. We have seen a fantastic growth. I'll tell you, 10 years ago, the annual export of our IT sector was 375 million euros. This year it will be over 2.6 billion euros.
Wow,
so
that's impressive.
It was an impressive growth, and the next thing for us going forward in the term of this government is going to be greater utilization of artificial intelligence and us being seen as one of the centers of excellence in biotechnology, bioengineering here in this part of Europe. And again, in that respect as well, I will be looking for closer collaboration with China. In terms of the changes that I brought, certainly digitization, and also the introduction of e-government.
Can you give us an example of that?
Absolutely. Before introduction of e-government, when there was a newborn in Serbia, parents needed to spend at least 3 to 4 days going around different institutions to register a child, to get their healthcare records, to apply for the citizenship, all of these things, apply for child allowance and things like that. Literally 3 days.
And now how does it take?
10 minutes in
Seriously?
the hospital. So what they need to have is their ID cards. They need to decide on the name for the child, and all the other information about their family, social status, all of that, we basically get on one click. We just draw from all of our databases, and when the baby gets home, everything is already awaiting.
No more piles of papers.
No more
anymore.
papers whatsoever.
You mentioned about President Alexander Vučić, and he has always spoken highly of you, and he said he had, quote unquote here, limitless trust in you. Well, Prime Minister, I don't know whether you know that actually President Vučić is very, very popular on Chinese social media network.
I know that, and
You
we are very happy and very proud.
Right, and many Chinese netizens, they're wondering, how does it feel to be working with him?
I have to say that, you know, it's an honor. It's also a great pleasure and privilege to be working side by side with President Vučić. He is a true leader. He is a true leader. He is literally working around the clock every day to make sure that we implement all of these projects that we have identified as projects which will change Serbia.
Is there any helpful advice that he has ever given you, especially when you first got started as a Prime Minister?
To focus on important things, to set out priorities and then run for those, rather than trying to fix everything. But the priority that you set as the vision of how to really change the country is something that we should be 100% dedicated to.
And this has become now one of your guidelines when you help to govern the country.
Absolutely, that is one, and the other one is, and that I think is especially difficult for a country that is placed in the European continent, that is not a large country, you know, in terms of population. We are a little bit less than 7 million people. To protect Serbia and to think of Serbia's key interests in mind. We, in the past, had some politicians and governments that would basically be almost listening to other countries, you know, what they would like to see from Serbia, and doing that. It was just easier for a small country to be governed in that way.
Right.
That has changed since Alexander Vučić became Prime Minister, and now obviously being the President, and that was his advice to me. We need to take care of Serbia's interests and interests of our people first and foremost.
Well, speaking of the foreign policies, in your very recent speech to the Parliament, you emphasized the strengthening of partnership with all partners, both East and West. Actually, for years, Serbia has been maintaining close relations with China, Russia, as well as Europe, while maintaining dialogue with NATO. So what are the thoughts of positioning the country's foreign policy with such a balanced manner, and why? Why the stress of all partnership is particularly important now?
Well, I'll tell you, Firstly, we do want to become part of the European Union. Our strategic focus in terms of foreign policy is to become part of the European family of nations. We think that's in the best interest of Serbia. At this point in time, 65% of foreign investors in Serbia come from the EU. That is our leading export market. 70% of our exports go to the EU. And geographically, culturally, you know, we are part of Europe. However, we are militarily neutral. You know, for one apparent reason is obviously the bombing of former Yugoslavia, which at that time was Serbia and Montenegro, back in 1999. And so, you know, military neutrality is something that our people, our country is deeply, deeply dedicated to.
But your close relations with China and Russia is put you sometimes in a stressful position. Was that a tough call for your government?
It is, and it has been. But on the other hand, I have to say that, you know, there is, to be perfectly honest, a little bit of a hypocrisy there as well. Because, I mean, if you look at all the Chinese investments in Europe, you know, 90% of those investments is in Western Europe, in the EU member countries. And our partners in the EU have facilitated Chinese investments for their growth. Now that we want to strengthen those partnerships, sometimes it has been said to us that it's not the best way forward. But again, you know, Serbia, it's in the best interest of Serbia to cherish that friendship and partnership. And China has proven, and also under very difficult circumstances and in the crisis situation, to be a true friend. And we value that, and we will never forget that. So yes, it's not, in terms of foreign policy, the easiest position to be in. It's not the most comfortable position, but it is the position which is in the best interest of our country and our people.
You mentioned a little bit earlier about one of the major responsibilities for the new government is about achieving EU membership, and this, of course, is one of the strategic goals of Serbia. And the accession negotiations started in 2014 and have, you know, go through many ups and downs. And in the very recent report by the European Commission on Serbia has made it very clear that the country needs to do more to align itself with the bloc, most notably by joining EU to impose sanctions on Russia. Well, Prime Minister Brnabｉć, we all know this kind of pressure will likely continue and even escalate. So what is the government's plan to deal with that?
Well, for example, today we have President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, visiting Serbia, and then later this afternoon I will have a meeting with her. And certainly, you know, that is going to be one of the topics. It always is. We don't think that policy on sanctions is the best policy. We do not think that that kind of a policy will benefit people in Russia or in Ukraine. And we have been subject to international sanctions back in the 90s, and we know how much ordinary citizens suffer because of sanctions. Also, Russian Federation, much like People's Republic of China, is one of those important countries that respects our territorial integrity of Serbia, and has never recognized the unilateral proclamation of independence of the so-called Kosovo. So Russia, as a member of the Security Council of the United Nations, much like our Chinese friends, are those that are in the Security Council fighting for the respect of our territorial integrity as internationally recognized country. So in that respect, again, it is very, very difficult to just forget about that.
朋友是时间的果实，这句塞尔维亚俗语是中塞友谊的真实写照。2016年，习近平主席访问塞尔维亚后，双边贸易额增长了3倍，塞尔维亚经济增速连年在欧洲国家中位居前茅。匈塞铁路、诺维萨德鲁马快速路、河冈斯梅戴雷沃钢厂、紫金博尔铜矿等众多合作项目取得积极进展。 2020年新冠疫情期间，塞尔维亚总统武契奇欢迎中国援塞医疗专家组时，对5星红旗献上深情一吻，续写了中塞友谊的佳话。对布尔纳比奇总理来说，2019年率团参加第2届进博会是他难忘的中国记忆。
让我们热烈欢迎塞尔维亚总理布尔纳比奇阁下致辞。
今年3月，他来到贝尔格莱德中国文化中心出席塞尔维亚中资企业商会成立大会。
U vreme koje je kompleksno i teško, kada se investitori iz drugih zemalja povlače, kada oklevaju da šire svoje investicije, u takva vremena kada otvaramo komoru kineske kompanije u Republici Srbiji, time praktično kineske kompanije govore da veruju u Republiku Srbiju, da veruju u političku, ekonomsku stabilnost Republike Srbije.
Well, Prime Minister Brnabić, let's talk a little bit about bilateral relations with China. And this relationship between China and Serbia is always depicted as ironclad. And this trusted friendship has also propelled the economic and trade development between the two countries. In 2021, China is Serbia's second largest foreign trade partner, and in the past decade, Serbia's export to China has increased 152 times.
Not 152%, is it? 152 times. It's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable indeed. And I know you said that now the sky is the limit for Serbian economy, given that both countries are pushing for relevant procedures concerning the free trade agreement. So what is your outlook on this front? And also, what are some of the areas of cooperation do you see the biggest potential for growth?
We want to be able to sign FTA with China as soon as possible. Most countries, when they criticize China, they criticize it for being closed, for protectionist policy, for trying to export and being close to allow investors and goods and services into China. And I think that is 100% not true. And again, President Xi Jinping has actually initiated this export fair. I had a big privilege to lead the Serbian delegation in one of those in Shanghai. It's fantastic. And again, I mean, you know, our companies love to go there. They have fantastic partnerships. And again, you know, only in this past couple of years, our exports to People's Republic of China reached 1 billion euros. Now, China is a vast country, and that important or big or impressive for you and for our viewers. But for Serbia, it's a huge number. 1 billion euro export is extremely important.
It is impressive to us as well.
And that is without the foreign trade agreement. So once we have FTA, that's, I said, you know, the sky is the limit, and that is one of my key priorities.
Mm-hmm. And you've met with Chinese President Xi Jinping a couple of times before, and as you said, in 2019, when you were in China for the second China International Import Expo, President Xi met with you and exchanged ideas about bilateral cooperation. So what is your impression of President Xi, and have there been any memorable moments during your meetings with him?
Well, I have to admit, I was very nervous to meet with again, the leader, the world leader, one of the most important world leaders. Is you know, it's always a privilege. And I know how much also President Aleksandar Vučić appreciates him. I know that, I know how many times President Vučić told me when meeting President Xi Jinping to always thank for all of the support that he and China provided to Serbia in very difficult times. So, you know, it was kind of, you know, to be very honest, nerve-wracking. But I was, you know, it was a fantastic meeting, and I remember, you know, I know President Xi Jinping as a very thoughtful, very calm person, you know. It's, he made it easier on me as the Prime Minister of a much smaller country than the People's Republic of China. You know, it was a fantastic meeting. He was here in 2016, and we are very much looking forward to hosting him again.
This bilateral or still friendship, as many would describe, has become even more strengthened during the fight against COVID-19 pandemic. And he said that before, the support of China saved jobs, and today the support of China saves lives. So under this context, and also the numerous challenges we're facing, how do you see, or what is your take on the vision initiated by President Xi Jinping about building a community of shared future for mankind?
The same as his President Xi Jinping's vision on Belt and Road Initiative. You know, it's exactly, you know, in those lines, that same vision of multilateralism, of the world working together to help each other out, to save humanity from some of the catastrophes that, you know, we can all face. You know, I was 100% sure that, you know, the lesson that we were to take away, all of us across the world, from pandemic was go back to multilateralism, to working together, sharing knowledge, sharing experiences, you know, to work together for the better futures. Unfortunately, I think the world actually went even more away from multilateralism and collaboration after COVID pandemic and created even deeper divisions, which I think really are endangering our whole humankind, you know, mankind, you know. So I'm hoping that at the end of the day, the reason will prevail, and that, you know, the vision of collaboration and openness will prevail.
Well, let's talk a little bit about a major political event in China, the 20th National Congress for CPC, which plays a key role in mapping out the development for the party and for the country in the upcoming years. So what do you think is the significance of this event?
I think not just we here in Serbia, but certainly the whole world has watched very closely and carefully what's happening and what are the decisions. I would like to congratulate the Communist Party of China on a very successful Congress, and also to President Xi Jinping on his third term, which I honestly think is something that is good news for the entire world. What was interesting to me is that you know, there are a lot of priorities that were set by President Xi Jinping that are priorities, for example, for Serbia and Serbian government, such as digitization, new technologies, healthcare and medicine, biotechnology. Education is one of the key pillars for sustainable growth and development. These are exactly the priorities that I have as the Prime Minister for the government of Serbia. And so we will continue to look closely at developments in China and try to replicate some of the things. And we will look for partnerships which will, you know, help us grow even faster our economy here in Serbia and may make our society even more prosperous.
Prime Minister Brnabich, thank you so much for your time and for sharing with us your very insightful views with our Chinese viewers here.
这里是当地著名的历史性地标卡莱梅格丹城堡。2016年，习近平主席对塞尔维亚进行国事访问时，就曾来到这里，俯望萨瓦河和多瑙河时感叹，仿佛看到了塞尔维亚民族生生不息的历史长河。如今，两国领导人不约而同地在多个场合表示，中塞是铁杆朋友，双边关系在历经了风云变幻的挑战后更为坚固。我们也期待看到两国继续将传统友谊转化为务实合作成果，谱写历史长河新的美好篇章。感谢您收看本期的高端访谈，我是邹韵，我们下期再会。